So my name is Rajiv Mody, and I head up emerging channels and brand growth for AARP. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey with social media influencers. Before I begin, just a little bit about AARP for those of you who may be less familiar with us. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization, and we advocate for the 100 million older adults in the US. And when I say advocate, we focus on issues that impact the lives of older adults. Issues like Social Security, Medicare, fraud, caregiving, and also savings and planning, saving for your retirement, saving for your future, and also work and jobs and tackling issues like age discrimination in the workplace. So one of the things that really got our attention is just the tremendous growth in the influencer marketing space, right? And if you take a look, this size, the market size for influencer marketing has more than doubled over the past 5 years. And also marketers, especially in the US, are increasingly looking at influencers as a part of their overall marketing mix. And at AARP, we've been utilizing the power of influence for a really long time. It's very much core to who we are. And you see here that AARP, the magazine, a lot of people don't know this, but it's the largest circulation magazine in the US with nearly 40 million readers. And we work with a lot of A-list talent, people like George Clooney, Sheryl Lee Ralph. You see here, Robert De Niro, Brooke Shields, John Bon Jovi, and so on. But we also work with a lot of others. And if you look across our social media campaigns just last year alone, we worked with over 50 different social media influencers. And so how did we get there? So back during the pandemic, it was, I believe, 2021, we were thinking a lot about TikTok. And we were looking at what was happening with respect to this platform, right? A lot of people were downloading TikTok. They were at home, they were bored, they were watching a lot of video. And we were thinking about, okay, how do we represent ourselves on a platform like this? What really makes sense? And we also kind of liked the idea and kind of leaned into the idea that, just this idea, this double take of like, AARP's on TikTok, really? And we thought that was interesting, right? And it was a moment for us. And I think when we thought about what our presence should be, we were thinking about how can we show up in a slightly different way? How can we show a more fun, lighter side of AARP on this platform? And then I think, in the summer of 2021, when we were planning our launch, this is what happened.
What's something really important that you should have been taught in school, but you weren't?
Zach here. I wish they taught me that you don't have to be over 50 to join AARP. Say what? I know. I would have saved so much money. Let me show you.
There's my membership card. I've been a member for 7 years.
Joined when I was 34 years old.
Dedicated to those over 50, but no minimum age, $12 a year.
Here's where I've saved the most.
If you fly British Airways, you get $65 off economy and premium economy and $200 off business class.
Saved loads doing this. Any other savings, Zach? Baby, I got you.
Multiple restaurants. You get between 10 and 25% off your check. You'll save on car rentals. Got up to 30% off Avis. All of these hotels. Hilton at Disney, AARP. The normal rates, AARP.
It's $100 right there. Like 8 years of membership fees. Wow, I see you got an AARP discount here. I moisturize.
So that was, I use the word moment, right? This was really a moment for us. And these moments don't happen very often. And that video got 15 million video views, organic video views, not paid, 3.5 million engagements, and drove over 100,000 memberships. And what it really did was, and what Zach did, is that he showed us the power of influencers and the power of platforms like TikTok to reach new audiences. So one of the things I've often said when it comes to social media is that in order to be successful, to truly be successful, you want to be timely, you want to be relatable, you want to be relevant. This example really speaks to timeliness and relatability. Just on TikTok, we worked with a number of creators, Gen X creators, to recreate a moment earlier this year. And it was a scene from The Breakfast Club, for those of you who are familiar with this iconic movie for Gen Xers, right? And it was a great project, and we actually launched the video on Breakfast Club Day, which is the actual day of the detention scene, right, in the movie, and it was March 24th. And for Gen X for us is a very important demographic because they are our prospects, right? Older millennials and Gen Xers are our prospects. So this was a great way to engage Gen Xers in a timely and relatable way. And then in terms of relevance, we not only work with different influencers, but we also thought about, okay, how do we create our own influencer on a platform like TikTok? And what you see here, or who you see here, is Craig Moorhead. And he's really the host of our TikTok account. And we tie into a lot of the trends that are on the platform. And so I'm just going to play this video for you real quick. We call it, it's part of our Gen X ASMR series, and I'll just give you a sense of what this looks like.
Come back to Gen X ASMR.
So sounds that Gen Xers can relate to, obviously. So I talked about the power of reach, relatability, relevance, and the fourth R is really mitigating risk, right? Because when you're working with influencers, you want to make sure that you have the right processes in place to mitigate risk. And this is one example. This is Scott Disick. He was on, that's a famous example from some time ago. He was on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And he actually made an innocent mistake, posted the advertiser's instructions in his post copy, right? And he posted it on social. And people were making fun of it and so on. There was some backlash. But I think that the lesson here is just making sure that you have the right processes and approvals in place when you're working with influencers. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. So why do brands work with influencers? I think authenticity is obviously a big part of it, and their ability to influence their followers. I'm kind of saying the obvious, but within that, it's the ability to sway purchase decisions. It's the ability to influence opinions, and also drive actions. And for AARP, for us, we work with influencers to engage prospects, those Gen Xers and older millennials that I was talking about before, also our members. We work with them to amplify our work around issue areas, Social Security, Medicare, some of those issues that I had mentioned earlier. And we also connect with the HL community, the Hispanic Latino community, the African American Black community, and others, and support our events, programs, and initiatives. And in terms of our marketing funnel, right? We have a membership funnel approach from a marketing standpoint. And I kind of like the spaghetti example that we heard about yesterday as well. I think that from an influencer standpoint, we're working across all the different areas of the funnel in terms of driving awareness, engagement, and conversion. I'm just going to give a quick example of each. In terms of driving awareness, we worked, Craig actually worked with just our own employees, actually, at AARP to put together a fun trivia series that basically has different generations competing against one another, right? And so this isn't some big shoot. This is pretty simple content. And it's a fun multi-generational trivia series, and I'm just going to play it real quick.
Here we go. Whose first album included the songs Long Tall Sally and Tutti Frutti?
Lil Richard.
What fast food commercial demanded to know where's the beef?
Wendy's.
Which TV show is set in a hospital now known as Gray Sloan Memorial?
Grey's Anatomy.
Which classic 1950s TV show featured a talking horse?
Mr. Ed.
Which 1982 album featured hits like Wanna Be Startin' Something and Beat It?
Thriller.
What fantasy book series features a house called Gryffindor?
Harry Potter.
Which defining Beat Generation novel was written by Jack Kerouac?
On the Road.
Who played Axel Foley in Beverly Hills Cop?
Eddie Murphy.
In Hey Ya, Andre 3000 asked you to shake it like what?
Polaroid picture.
So this video actually was a top performer for us. It did really well. I mean, in terms of driving mid-funnel engagements, we had an event that we put together that was called Care to Laugh, and it was focused on caregiving, caring for your loved ones. And we worked with 5 different influencers in the caregiving space to help raise awareness and drive registrations for the event. And ultimately, they were able to drive over 1/3 of the overall registrations, as you see here. I mean, in terms of conversions, when we saw obviously what Zach did, I mean, we really, I think, have been working closely with them for some time, and we brought him on board to be an official influencer for AARP. And here's a quick example of a promotion that we did with him for both Labor Day and Black Friday.
I smell a deal.
For a limited time, AARP is offering a 5-year membership for just $9 a year. Question, is it true that you don't have to be over 50 to join? This is true. As long as you're over 18, you're good to go. Zach, you said $9 a year, not a month. Yep, $9 a year as long as you sign up for 5 years. Another thing you should know is that my AARP membership saves me $10 a month per line on my AT&T Unlimited Premium plan. Yes, it's $9 a year and I save $10 a month. AARP has discounts at restaurants and deals on one-way car rentals. Plus, AARP has a rewards program with tons of local deals and members earn more. But they also have great financial resources. For instance, I took the long-term healthcare quiz, and even though that feels like a long way away for me, I'm in the age bracket that should start planning. And AARP has a bunch of tools and calculators, like the retirement calculator or the 401k calculator, that I can utilize for planning. And if you're interested, you can go right here to my quick links and right here. All these benefits and savings are exhausting.
So that video is really efficient in terms of driving and cost-effective in terms of driving membership for us. So just a little bit about the nuts and bolts, right, in terms of our approach to working with influencers and how we work with them. You have your mega macro influencers, right, the ones with a lot of followers, micro influencers and nano influencers who have a smaller number of followers. And just some of the things that we think about in this space, do we want to work with someone who is more of a cultural authority, John Bon Jovi would be an example of that, or someone who's more of a subject matter expert, like a Zach, right? Zach is an expert when it comes to travel and discounts. So those are some of the questions we ask. We also look at cost structure, right? We look at the amount of content that's being produced and diversifying our risk. And so, if you're working with a mega or macro influencer, chances are you're going to be paying more for that content. If you're working with someone who's more of a micro or nano influencer, you might be paying a little bit less. You may be able to work with more influencers and create more content, and like I said, diversify your risk a little bit, and from a paid media standpoint, lean into what's working versus what may be not working as well for you. And then another piece of learning for us was, just in terms of the platforms, right? I think our thinking going into it was that both TikTok and Instagram Reels, especially would be the best platforms for our influencer related initiatives. And the reason why is at least seemed obvious at the time that when you look at influencer activity, you've seen a ton of activity on those two platforms. And what we learned were that, yes, those platforms are great, but Facebook is also actually a very powerful platform to run influencer content on. And one of the reasons why that we've seen is that Facebook is a strong platform for driving conversions, right? The mid and bottom of funnel actions. And so that was I think, an interesting piece of learning for us. And then also, just in terms of engaging older demographics, Facebook has high adoption among older demographics as well. So in terms of the process for working with influencers, you all can obviously read what's on here. I'll just call out a few things. In the beginning, you want to be very clear about goals, objectives, KPIs. In terms of the vetting, I talked a little bit about mitigating risk, and you want to make sure you're vetting the influencers, and that means taking a look at what content they've produced in the past, what they've said in the past, what they've done in the past, making sure that none of that comes back to bite you. As a brand, you want to make sure it's the right fit from a brand standpoint, that they're the right fit from a brand standpoint. And then in terms of approvals and having those processes in place, I think that example I talked about earlier was a good reason for that. And this is really important in terms of just setting clear parameters in terms of messaging and from a brand standpoint, but then giving them the room to do what they do, to be able to engage their followers. Because if you try to script them, and if you're pulling the reins too tight, it becomes very hard for them to be able to engage their followers and ultimately for you to achieve your goals. So just to quickly recap, we talked about the power of reaching new audiences. We talked about relatability and relevance, and also mitigating risk, the 4 R's. And I'm going to leave you with a quick video. It's called When Gen X Waits for Their Kids to Get Ready. And it may be something that for those of you with kids can relate to.
And I'm the only one who volunteered to drive you today. Never gonna get there, never gonna get there, never gonna get there, never gonna get there, never gonna get there. All by myself. I shouldn't be all by myself. So many tears you cried, so much pain inside. Oh, baby, we ain't leaving till you get dressed. Don't stop putting your socks and shoes on.
Thank you.
So we're going to do questions. Does anybody have a question? Because I have one first. All right, here's my question for you. For planning and buying, how did the process go to get this strategy implemented, bringing it to the people who run all the overall marketing, the CMO? Because there had to have been at least a first, what, you're kidding me, you want to go on TikTok? And there had to be a whole process that probably took a certain amount of time to get everybody over the hump of thinking this was a good idea. How long did that process take? How did you have the patience to push it all the way through? And any tips for people trying to push through ideas that typically are met with resistance?
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great question. And we were very intentional about that process. And we thought a lot about what we would need to do in order to justify the new strategy and the commitment that we were making to this. And I will say that we're fortunate from a marketing standpoint to have some great leaders at AARP who are willing to take smart risks and we're very supportive of us here. And so, in the beginning, we looked at a lot of research and we saw the trends in terms of what was happening on TikTok, and so that was obviously a big moment for us. What Zach did on TikTok got a lot of attention, obviously, internally with the organization. So another big moment for us. And then just really refining our thinking, our strategy and approach, based off of what we thought was going to work best on the platform. And then once we got up and running, a lot of testing and learning, and again, continuous refinement, right, in terms of our approach. It's rare that you get something right, or perfect right out of the gate, right? That does not happen very often. And I think in this case, it's been a little bit of both. I do think that, we were, in terms of the direction, it was the right overall direction. And then we've sort of tested and learned and refined along the way.
Rajiv, it's Steve. What kind of targeting are you doing beyond broad demo? Of the broad demos you're after, are there particular profiles that you're after in any of these platforms or sub demos that you're focusing on?
Well, I think in general the targeting that we do. I mean, we use interest-based targeting and affinity-based targeting, and I think, you know, and we typically try to start fairly broad with our targeting, and then we let the algorithms kind of do their job, right? And go more narrow. But we use Advantage Plus. We use affinity-based targeting. We do retargeting, and you know, in terms of visitors to, if we're talking about caregiving, for example, you know, I mean, we'll do retargeting for people who have visited appropriate sites tied to that area. We also use custom audience targeting as well. So I mean, those are all areas that we focus on.
Got a question here?
Hey, Rajiv.
Oh, go ahead.
Your table.
Yeah.
How do you think about amplifying the organic work that you're doing, right? So great job with the influencers. They reach who they reach. That gets spread organically. How do you think about amplifying that from a paid perspective?
Well, I mean, we use paid media to help amplify that, right? And so we'll boost a lot of the posts. You know, for TikTok, you have Spark ads, and then for Facebook, you're able to boost a lot of the content. So I think that's an area of focus for us as well. And so we're using in-feed, we're using Spark ads. We also use paid search, or video search ads as well. So those are just some of the mechanisms that we use to amplify our content.
One quick follow-up question just for you. Did this kind of campaign change at all the makeup of the membership for AARP?
Well, I mean, we're still focused on older adults, right? I mean, I think that is our primary focus. And I think what this does, I think, is really give us an opportunity to engage prospects and to warm prospects up to the brand, right? And be able to connect with prospects. So for us, I mean, that has really been the major focus. And kind of this lighter side of AARP, you know, a fun side of AARP, showing up in unexpected ways has helped us do that.
Well, it would seem that one of the downstream effects of this would be that you'd be sort of softening the ground a little bit so that you're getting those older constituents that are about to sign on might sign on a little earlier than otherwise they would have.
Possible, yeah. I mean, possible. I think you know, our hope is that by doing this, like, people are seeing another side of AARP as well, and that, you know, it's a welcoming side for them, and so, you know, absolutely. I think, you know, we maintain the focus on older adults. It's hard to be everything for everyone, right? I mean, I think having a focus is very important, and it's core to who we are. But I think in terms of you know, having a more open approach to prospects, I think is key.
All right. Well, great job, Rajiv. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That was awesome.